Hey guys, I hope you are doing well and your swimming is going great. I am so sorry for another break between episodes. I'm just so freaking busy. Fike Swim is killing it. We've got teams adopting our paddles, our suits, our parkas, you name it. We are selling it. And oh my gosh, I'm burning both ends of the candle here because I am still living that pro swimmer lifestyle, chasing down 52 in the 100 breast, 155 in the 200 breast. And I know I owe you guys an episode on what I've been up to. I'm sorry. In 2 weeks, I got my first meet, so I'll try to, coordinate with that, get you some coverage, and we'll talk about it. But man, speaking of suits and paddles, okay, we have been adding like crazy to the paddle collection. Go check them out if you haven't in even just a few days. We're gonna add like 50 more before the year is over. They're gonna make great Christmas presents. Black Friday, we'll have a little sale there. But seriously, the paddles we've added lately, really sweet. Suits, Halloween. You got 2 more weeks left to get your Halloween suit. We add to the collection every year because I love this holiday. And these suits are great, not just at Halloween, but also year round. They're not the cheesy BS kiddie suits, okay? So go check those out. Oh, big announcement, okay? And then we'll get into the show. We got a new product launching next week, and it's gonna commit me to an episode, but it's okay, I gotta do it. We're launching anti-paddles. Now, these are not your normal anti-paddles. If you're going, been there, done that, seen those, okay. No, these are different. And I would love to tell you why, because I've been using them for the last couple of weeks. They are awesome, but I can't. I'm gonna have to tell you why next week, what's so special about them, and you're gonna have to tune in. So there we go, it's a contract, mutually binding. You're in it, I'm in it, let's do this. On to the show. We got a great show. It is the third and final part of my interview with Coley Stickels, and we are talking about dryland and lifting, which, in my opinion, just as important as swimming. And depending on the event, maybe even more important. I know, heresy, right? Okay, so this is where I normally say, give me a like and subscribe as the intro music plays, but honestly, I don't feel like I've earned it. Even though it just takes a little click, click right there. You just got to find your way down as you're waiting for that intro music to play. I don't feel like our relationship is there and it needs some rebuilding. So I'm not going to ask for that. I'm not going to ask. Just whatever you need to do while the intro music plays, that's up to you. And if you happen to give me a like and subscribe, thank you. Thank you. I will see you on the other side of it. Let's do this. So let's get into the second big piece of the pie chart, which is lifting and dryland. And just kind of starting off with, at what age do you think somebody should lift? Like, is high school? I think back in the day, the thinking was that high school might be too early, show some potential to the college coaches, go to college, lift, get big, all that kind of stuff. But I know you've got high schoolers, including my son, who's in your program, who are doing some lifting. So is there a good age to start that?
Yeah, I don't know. Doctors always talk about, growth plate, being fully developed, that kind of thing. And I'm not sure that there's a consensus on when you should start lifting. And I don't think you need to lift at all necessarily, but in terms
Wow.
of load for squats and that kind of thing, I just don't think, calisthenics can load the legs enough. I mean, we used to run up hills with people on our backs and kind of do what wrestling does, and kind of, they call it a tree climb, and move each other. But at some point you want to load the back and different parts of the body a little bit more specifically, and that's the only reason really we lift. I mean, we do the exercises we do some complexes, and we do some landmine stuff that is, I guess, kind of complex, but we're not doing, we're doing Olympic lifting, snatch, push presses, squats. And that's really pretty much it. We're not doing a lot of, bodybuilding type stuff, bench press, curls, stuff like that.
Yeah. Now, you were talking about periodization earlier. when I think of periodization, I think of how I used to do it. I don't really periodize anymore. Um, at least not the way I used to, which was at the beginning, a week of 3 sets of 12, a week of 3 sets of 10, then a week of 4 sets of 8, a deload week, 5 sets of 5 for a few weeks, deload week, and then max lifting. But that's not what you guys do, right?
No, we're pretty much there's different ways to think about lifting, and these are, they're just terms that strength coaches use, but like conjugate lifting and triphasic training with Cal Dietz and French contrast training. We implement all of these types of training. But really what it is the simplified version of it is we'll do a strength movement and we'll pair it with a power movement. And for a lot of the Olympic lifting, because it's so technical, we're not doing heavy loads. We can generate a ton of power as much as we need to, and we measure that through perch or through E-node sensors or velocity-based training or lasers or Tendo units, or we go as far down that rabbit hole too. But we're measuring those with those units, and we can generate a lot of power with very lightweight, 20-30% of your 1 rep max. We can do it with med balls. And we do heavier squats, but we're going pretty low reps. The rep range is like 2 to 4.
Wow.
Pretty much everything we're doing.
And no max lifting, right?
No max lifting. We never really go above 80 85 maybe percent of 1 rep max, and we might do that for at the most 4 to 5 reps.
Yeah. Now, we talked about this before the show, but we don't want to go down the rabbit hole of getting real scientific with the terms and all this stuff. And I frankly hate when articles and such put out too much of that. So just in layman's terms, what's the drawback to doing a max lift? Because in my mind, layman's mind, I think, okay, if I can bench or let's say if I can squat 500 pounds versus 300 pounds, well, that's more propulsion off the walls.
Yep. There's an argument in the strength world. It's the power. It's the force velocity curve, right? It's the age old argument. What's the most important? Is strength more important than speed? And what type of speed? Accelerative strength, and there's all these different terminologies for speed, and really we don't know. We can, if we're trying to generate peak power, not necessarily peak force, but peak power, then you need kind of the combination of the two. You need a high force, and you need high speed, high velocities. And then you can go into the absolute strength where, like you said, you can do a max squat, and you can get up that 1-2 rep max squat. That generates rate of force development too. But, a lot of the studies maybe suggest that that the combination of the two work in tandem with one another, especially with plyometrics. Long time ago, Dr. Chu did studies that showed, before you started doing depth jumps and very aggressive plyometrics, you needed to be able to, generate, I think it was 1.5 to 2 times squat your body weight. And then kind of phased out of that. So nobody really knows for sure how to generate power. Is it 5 sets at 80%? Is it, 3 reps at 30% of your 1 rep max? It depends on the exercise, but there has been we do a combination of the two. We don't that's kind of why we don't really leave it to chance. We'll do some force, RFD movements where we'll go heavier, and then we'll pair it with a power-based movement that's not heavy. So maybe we do a snatch, at 75% of 1 rep max, a hang snatch, and then we pair that with a med ball toss where we try to hit the ceiling with a 10-pound med ball. And we're only doing a couple of reps. And the reason we keep the reps slow, and I think it's important to get into this, but we want to fatigue the right. We want to recruit. Shouldn't even say fatigue. We want to recruit the right muscle groups,
Right.
the right type fibers, right? So we're trying to recruit type 2B fibers. And when we start doing too many reps and we start going to failure, we start recruiting the wrong fibers. So we don't want any 2A. We're trying to 2B, 2X, whatever. They keep changing the name in science, and I would probably offend a lot of scientists by using 2X instead of 2B. And
You're not offending me. You're good.
yeah, okay. So yeah, so we want to keep the reps low and we want to keep the power high. So we don't want to get into a state where we're starting to fatigue to the point where we're recruiting the wrong fibers.
Right. So one of the things you're measuring is meters per second,
Yeah,
right? Like how fast
exactly.
is that weight moving?
Yes, bar
And
speed.
so it sounds like what you're saying, to get back to like true layman's terms, is if I can move, I was using squat. If I can move 200 pounds really fast,
Yep,
I don't know, come up with a number, whatever.
yep,
But whatever a really fast number is, that's better than moving 400 pounds. Even though I'm
yes,
trying to move it fast,
yep,
it's better than moving 400 pounds at a much slower level.
yes, exactly. That's been the consensus overall. I mean, you'd have scientists that will argue that point, but I think there are more studies that show yes. I think increasing power is more applicable and transferable to swimming at least than increasing absolute strength.
Yeah. So that makes sense. But here is my question. When I think about moving something fast, if it's me in the gym, like I am putting everything I've got into it. And so that seems to tax my CNS, my central nervous system. And like, so for instance, when I go to the gym, I got rage music going. I'm just ready to freaking kill somebody and send shit through the wall.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm looking at my E node sensor and I'm like, I'm chasing these numbers, like, okay, that was 1.8 meters per second. Now I want 1.9 and be like, rah, let's go.
Yep.
To me, that's a lot of CNS. So
Yes.
how do you manage that as a coach between, because not just we don't have to just deal with the weight room. We've also got CNS fatigue in the pool.
Correct. Yes. So that's a tough question to answer, and it's a great question, and it's one I think about often. And I think the answer is we're trying to pair what we're doing in the water and what we're doing in the weights, and not necessarily doing one and the same. For instance, I know that Cal does stuff where they're taking, they do a lot of high intensity Olympic lifting or power type lifting in the weight room, and then they'll transfer that right into the pool from one session to the next, literally. We never do anything like that. I always think that that's too much central nervous system engagement. So we're trying to basically, on days that we do heavy central nervous system, neural drive, whatever you want to call it, um, Olympic lifts or anything in the weight room that's aggressive to that extent, we're doing recovery in the water. And then on days where we're doing lactate in the water and really high aggressive central nervous system stuff there, we're taking it easy on land. So we're kind of doing the opposite of that for that reason, so that we are very much aware of not fatiguing the adrenal glands to the point of where you can't recover. And it's very hard to measure.
Right.
As an individual, have to be cognizant of it because unless you're doing the saliva test where you spit into a tube every 10 minutes or whatever they do to test adrenal fatigue, it's really difficult um, to test central nervous system fatigue.
Yeah. Yeah. So you guys lift 3 times a week
Yep,
and you swim 6. You don't do doubles.
correct.
Not in the water. And so is 3 the sweet spot for lifting, or do you have some people go 2 or 4? I know some people really like to hit the gym.
Yep, it variables. It's variable based on where we're at in the season. So typically, especially with pros and college swimmers, we'll start out with 2, then we'll go to 3. 3 is kind of the sweet spot, I think, because we're also doing dryland on different days. Usually, we do dryland twice a week, and then if they want to go 4, I usually allow it, depending on how their training's going in the water. Again, if they're so fatigued and it looks like they're just beating themselves up, I'll try to get them out of the weight room, maybe more recovery in the water. because like you said, we do fry it pretty hard in the weight room, and we're not doing, drop sets or bodybuilding type stuff. Like you said, it is very power oriented, but that takes its toll on the body too. So
Right.
I take that into consideration when we're in the water. So if somebody really wants to lift 4 times a week, I'll add that in, but I have to structure it properly, especially if we're doing dryland. But 4 would be the max, and they pretty much have to ask me for it. And on that end too, we don't do doubles unless usually somebody asks for it. They've got to come up to me and say, I don't feel like I'm getting enough X, Y, and Z. I'm swimming the 200 long course fly. I'd like to do another aerobic set through the week, or can we work on my left arm? It feels weak. Put me on the tower, and let's try that. So,
Right.
um, or sometimes I'll recommend it if I feel like they're not in shape or whatever, their capacity's low, or I might have them come in and do, but it's very short if we do it at all. But it's usually, yes, we're usually 6 practices a week, and that's what we've been doing for a long time.
Okay. And dryland, to be clear, is like boxing.
Yeah, I typically reserve the dry land. We did it with the high school kids in the fall. We'll do agility ladders. We'll do cones. We do a lot of cutting, and just it's kind of, again, get the heart rate up. It's kind of our warm up really for the water, so that when we get in, we don't have to sit there and do, 300 swimming pool kick and nonsense. We're ready. Our muscles are
Right.
elastic, our core temperature's up, everything's ready to go. We can get in, get a feel for the water, do a couple hundred, and then we're ready to fire. So
Right.
a lot of it's just kind of warm up base, but it's fun. I mean, again, we're running around cones. It's kind of parkour type stuff. I mean, that's not what it was intended to be. That's what it turned into. And then again, it's just playing. We're just playing. We're playing with cones. We're playing with whatever we have available. Sometimes it's the kids making it up on the fly. Sometimes it's me making it up on the fly. But it's just a warm up, and it's just meant to get the heart rate up a little bit, and get ready to get in the water.
Yeah. Yeah. We used to do that at Texas too. It was called Six Square. Now, when you guys lift, is it full body? Is it upper lower switching or what?
We typically, when we lift 3 times a week, the first day will be like a pulling type movement. So it's, a pull up or a row or something. And then we'll add like an Olympic lift with it. It's usually a clean and do a front squat. And then the next day would be pushing, pressing type movements, where we do a push press or a push up, a plyo push up, or anything pressing away, tricep involvement. And then the third lift of the week would be kind of a push pull, where we incorporate both. And it's usually lighter, it's more power oriented, and there's more agility involved. And we do some landmines, stuff like that. We do some cords, some bands, hypers. And a lot of hamstrings kind of on Saturdays, auxiliary type movement when we
Oh,
are done with kind of we do the power movements first, and then we kind of go into the auxiliary movements second.
it sounds like roughly four movements. And
Yeah, it's not ultra complex. I think what people get confused about is when the lifts themselves are pretty basic, right? I mean, people know how to front squat and back squat and do a clean push
right.
press. Those are pretty basic. When we pair those with med ball type movements, and we're bouncing the ball off the wall, and the stuff that you see on, my wife puts this stuff on Instagram, and we're knocking over boxes and moving, all over the place. And I take a lot of heat for it, right? I mean, I get ripped apart constantly for it because somebody, doesn't like the fact that I knocked over a box or threw a ball in a weird way. It just, for whatever reason, they don't like it. But I find that in terms of engagement, the kids love it.
Yeah.
Number two, it's hard to keep them. They get so good so fast. They're resilient, and so you've got to find new ways to keep them engaged and keep them off balance almost. So,
Right.
durability, athleticism, and then from the physiological, component, we rate of force development. We're trying to get neural drive, and we're trying to get contractile force, and we're trying to recruit more, fibers in a short period. So that's what we're trying to do with the Dryland, and we're pairing that with a lot of basic movements. So it's not as complex as it
Right.
looks.
Yeah, I showed one of your videos to a strength coach at the gym that I work out in, and he goes, "Huh, it looks like he's trying to build athleticism."
Yeah.
And I think that makes sense if you consider that you're probably getting a lot of kids from other programs who have really just done swimming their whole lives.
Yes, exactly.
And they've never been asked to move on a dime, to pivot left, right, to jump really high, dunk a basketball, whatever.
Exactly.
Now, in terms of the types of lifts that you guys do, a lot of people would probably immediately jump to the word supersetting, but you prefer the word pairing,
Yep.
where you're putting like two movements together within a single set. So you do this, and
Yep.
then you immediately do this.
Yep.
Is that pretty much all of your lifting?
Pretty much. I mean, we're kind of, as I mentioned earlier, we're kind of erring on the side of caution, right? As in science, we don't really know what um, we don't know how to develop power. We really don't. I mean, if you ask, one of my best friends is a PhD at exercise phys, and I'm like, what's the best way? Should we do 5 reps of squats at 80%, or should we do 3 snatches at 30% of 1 rep max? And I never get a clear answer, and the literature doesn't really specify, and it's a little of both. So part of it is just integrate. It's like, well, if that's the case, then let's do both. So we might pair, a three squat back squats at 80% of your 1 rep max, and then do 3 plyo jumps or assisted plyo jumps, or even get into French contrast training where we do 3 back squats and 3 plyo jumps and then 3 assisted jumps. And so there's no wrong or right way to do this. We're still exploring. Even science isn't there yet. We're always playing with these movements, and once you get a good hold on what you think works and what's safe and what's can be tolerated, then you can push the limit a little bit more. And that's kind of what I've done for years. Is I kind of look at the group I'm working with, what equipment I have, and then you use science to some degree, and you use your background anecdotally of what's worked before. You pair all of those things together and try to keep it engaged, keep the athlete engaged, and then kind of have fun with it, play with it.
But do you have movements in the gym? But do you have any favorites that it's like every swimmer has to be doing these?
Not necessarily. I think the ones that I like are complexes because they're quality movements. For instance, like a hang snatch into an overhead squat into a press or a push press. And you can take that anywhere you want. You can take that into a back squat and you can just keep going with it. But something like that where you're integrating, movements on different planes. They're athletic movements. They require balance. They require, upper body, lower body strength, full body, compound, dynamic movements. Those, and then, they're also power. Snatch is definitely a power-based movement. I mean, to me, it's one of my favorite exercises. I'll probably never, and I love the thing that we don't discuss with snatches too is that most swimmers that come to me have never done a snatch at
Right.
all, whether it's a barbell or dumbbell snatch. And a lot of them actually end up liking it for the stretch, right? I mean, it's
Mm.
really opens up the upper pecs and delts and even the thoracic spine. And there's a lot of that's a lot of the movements we do too, kind of open up that cavity, that chest cavity, and we explore. Doing an overhead squat, you've got to have a lot of upper body flexibility. So
Right.
that you asked me earlier, kind of, do we stretch or anything like that? We do some dynamic warm up, but we don't do static stretching. So
Hmm.
that in and of itself, and that these Olympic lifters have incredible cores. Just because the lifting, you have to brace when you're getting the weight
Right.
up over your head. They have incredible flexibility to lose the weight behind you in a snatch. So a lot of these things that accompany Olympic lifts aren't only for the power development, but they're also different attributes of these exercises that kind of pair well into swimming.
Yeah. Now, what about muscle ups? Is that a good one?
Awesome movement. I don't know where I saw it or read it, but we do something where we do a snatch and then we do a muscle up. They're kind of the like reverse of each other,
Right.
right? So, the snatch is like 1 or 2 reps as fast as you can, and then we'll do 2 muscle ups. We also do this thing where I stack plyo boxes against a wall. I don't I used to have different names for it, like the Great Wall of China or the Leaning Tower of Pisa or whatever. And we're jumping, so we run at the boxes. They're usually, I have no idea, at least I don't know, 7 feet high, and then we jump onto them, and then we try to do a muscle up. So we jump, we get to the highest point, and the hands come up on the box, and then it's kind of a pressing motion. And then we put different heights of different boxes, and it's an athletic movement. And then when they get really good at it, we'll do it with one arm, and then we'll pivot at the top of the box. And then, but we do that. We pair that with muscle ups. We pair that with snatches. We pair that on push pull days. So yeah, I mean, again, a lot of it's just athleticism in games. It's just it's like a kid in a school playground and wanting to play with the movements. It's what I kind of feel like every time I walk into a weight room. It's like, well, what can I do differently with that box? I mean, we use boxes as sleds. We use them as jumping devices. We use them as we push over boxes. We knock them over. We throw them. We do the same thing with weights. We do the same thing with cords, and whatever we can do to engage the swimmers and keeping it relevant and kind of transferable to swimming in terms of power development, full body movement, motor unit recruitment. We can talk about the physiology of why we do it, but really it's transferable and it's engaging to the swimmer.
Right. Now, are there any movements that are just absolute no-nos? Just like this will not help your swimming.
I always we don't do a lot of bench press. We do it on occasion. We don't do a lot of machine weights. And the one thing about machine weights, it's unless somebody's injured or needs the back stabilized with something behind them, or
Yeah.
we don't do it. But when I was at Alabama and when I was at Indiana, I was the strength coach for my groups, and so sometimes for the mid distance and distance groups. And that was by design because I knew what they were doing in the water, and I didn't want, no offense, a 23-year-old intern that has just come out of college, that's working with the quarterbacks, working with some of the best swimmers in the world. So
Right.
I use my background, my science background, my Olympic lifting background, of course, my swimming background, and would put these into we would do the weights. And so my point is, once we got in the weight room, I would have lengthy discussions with a lot of the football coaches, strength coaches, and some of them loved only machines. They didn't agree with me at all in terms of Olympic lifting or movement based. And they had a guy from Penn State and a guy from Notre Dame, these big time strength coaches, thought I was totally insane. And I likewise thought they were insane because it's like, what data are you reading? Here's what I'm reading. And they'd be like, well, how many national championships do you have? They'd show me their rings and be like, okay, well, there may be something to it. So I've never really done much in terms of machines, but I've always wanted to kind of give that a trial run because it's probably more safe than what I'm doing, but I'm not sure. I haven't seen much literature in terms of machine lifting and how that applies to what we're trying to do in the water.
Well, on that note, I'm going to wrap it up, but I hope to do this again in the future because
Anytime.
I didn't even ask, I don't even know, a quarter of the questions that I wanted to. So I could just keep going all day long. So I appreciate your time. I learned a lot. I'm sure everybody else watching this did. And thank you so much for doing this.
Absolutely. I think one of my favorite parts of coaching and my favorite aspects is having discussions like this and talking about the why, why we do things. It's always kind of people just see the end result, but they don't see the process. So it's fun to have these discussions, and I'm happy to do it anytime.